So let's circle back to China now. When you talked about their forex reserves, they have a cushion there, and you've seen now that they've proposed forward the AIIB, the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, of which they're getting participating countries to be on the board of, because you have the IMF, and also now you even have the BRICS Bank that is from Brazil, India, China, and South Africa, which is, it kind of seems like they're all competing against each other. So what are the implications of China's move here? And do you think that is that have anything to do with the forex reserves to an extent, or what is your thoughts?
Yeah, sure. I mean, China has in the last few years has actually graduated to become the world's number 2 economy, only after the U.S. So, if you look at that and you consider that despite that, it has very little say in financial matters in a global sense. Mm-hmm. The U.S. is for all practical purposes, the U.S. is actually, doing everything it can to shut it out of influence at the IMF and the World Bank, despite it being, a member. If you look at the reasons for some of this, part of the problem is that China's currency is not so easily, readily convertible. That's necessary for them to achieve, to have more influence, but it's certainly something that they're quite aggressively, I'd say, working towards. You can see that the country's changing that through establishing large currency swap deals with its bigger trading partners. It's pushing to have the yuan included in the IMF's currency basket. That's called the SDR, Special Drawing Rights. Mm-hmm. And that's actually up for review this fall. That takes place once every 5 years. And this year is one of those years. From my research, China is clearly pushing very hard to get the yuan into the SDR basket. That will give it a lot of credibility. That will give it, on some level, somewhat of a reserve currency status. Mm-hmm. And they're taking these steps to take their place on the world stage, and it's certainly getting a lot of support from other nations, especially the BRICS nations, being the other members being Brazil, Russia, India, and South Africa, mm-hmm. with their own BRICS infrastructure bank, but now with the Asian infrastructure bank as well. And interestingly enough, the only sort of major power that has not signed on to the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank is the U.S. Mm-hmm. Everybody else, in dribs and drabs, decided to sign on and become members.
Which countries have joined?
That one, I am not sure if to date they were hesitating still, but in terms of major powers, those would be the only 2, to my knowledge. Everybody else has joined. So you really have to ask yourself, are you being effective by shutting them out when essentially all of the rest of the world is partaking? It just it doesn't make sense.
So given. Sorry, I missed the countries that have joined the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank so far.
They're basically every country.
Oh, okay.
Including
the UK as well?
I can't speak for, some of the very smaller ones that, may or may not have entertained even participating. Chances are they've even participated just because they're hoping, that they can benefit from some of the infrastructure projects in their countries. But to my knowledge, everyone has signed on except for the U.S. That I'm quite certain of. The one I'm not certain of is Japan.
Right, Japan. It was
the only 2. Everyone
right.
else has decided they will participate in this institution.
Right. The finance minister of Japan was contemplating, but because I guess through the allies with the U.S., we just don't know yet. So yeah, I mean every other country, Canada, UK, and several other countries have signed up. So it'll be quite interesting to see how this progresses forward. Given all this, that's what's happening with the worldwide debt, Greece and their situation. What and also these infrastructure investment banks that are being built up. What can we, how does this affect precious metals and demand for precious metals? Is there any linkage there?
Oh, sure. I mean, absolutely, yes. I think there is, connection. One thing I will say to start off with is that admittedly, and this I know from, despite a lot of research in the area, it's difficult to get, I'm going to say even fair, never mind complete, but fair transparency in terms of, how much is being produced, how much is being consumed, imported, exported, and so on, especially with regards to China. There are different ways always of measuring this. Someone might come to, be looking at the same thing and come to a different number. But, gold demand from China and India, those two countries, by many accounts, is in fact enough to absorb all of the annual mine production every year, and even and beyond. So, we have to ask ourselves, if we've, where's the rest coming from?
Right.
Because they're not the only ones that are buying every year. And yet, as I say, realistically, that's where everything that's mined is actually going just to those two countries. So as I say, we know others are buying. Lots of other central banks even are buying, not to mention individuals and institutions and so on. So some of it's coming from scrap, that's for sure, recycling. But there's not enough to account for that. I mean, like I say, we have, just with China and India, we haven't even accounted yet for other relatively aggressive buyers like Russia's central bank. So it's pretty inevitable to come to the conclusion that some of this gold is being transferred from the west to the east. As I say, some of it's coming from recycling, and we've also moved in the last few years to a new sort of paradigm with central banks where before they were much bigger sellers of gold, today they're either net sellers or and at a very, very low amount, or actually net buyers of gold. And so that's also not contributing to supply. So, the lack of supply is really hard to square with the strength of demand. China is happy to keep buying at these low prices. They are accumulating, I believe, very, very aggressively. The last time they announced what they had, it was a little over 1,000 tons officially. I think that's, the next time we get the number, I think that's probably going to be somewhere around 4 or 5 times that level, at the least.
Well, they're saying that they're going to release the numbers sometime this year, as I think, because the IMF meets, I guess, right?
Well, right, and that could very easily be connected to their request to have the SDR basket revised to include their currency.
Right.
And if they make an announcement before a final sort of decision is made by the IMF of their gold reserves, then we can, it's easy to conclude that they are lending by informing the world that they have now this much larger reserve of gold, that that not that it's used to back their currency, but it certainly gives a lot more confidence and credibility towards the currency, which would inevitably help it to make it into the IMF's special drawing rights basket of currencies.
Right.
So I mean, there's your link, the link between gold and China and debt, and China's wish to have more say on the world stage when it comes to decisions that regard finance and so on. So, if, for example, China does, as I expect, when they eventually release these new official numbers for their gold reserves, I mean, realistically, I would expect probably quite a large gap upwards in the price of physical gold, just because it's unknown right now, and I think that it's probably underestimated by most.
Very interesting. Well, thanks, Peter, for going over your thoughts and perspectives on the gold market as well as the worldwide debt. It seems to be accumulating. We'll see how it works over the next few months when China revises their numbers. And if you want to reach Peter, you can visit him at his website and with the team that he works with at moneymorning.com. Works with several authors there. Peter writes his own articles and headlines every couple of weeks or so, right?
At least every couple of weeks, and typically weekly.
Oh, perfect. And is that the best way they can get in touch with you?
The easiest way is they can either leave a response or they can speak to someone at customer service if they would like to somehow reach me. I would say that's the best way, for sure.
Excellent. Well, we'll definitely put up the contact information, moneymorning.com. Peter Krauth, thanks a lot, and we'll talk soon.
Sonny, it was a pleasure. Thank you for the opportunity.